Welcome to this edition of Atlanta Live. I'm Ann White, and we're here today with a very special guest who's going to be sharing her story of courageous faith. So much so that it's going to inspire you and me to be more courageous in our walk with Christ. So I want you to join me in welcoming Tammy Trent, Christian music recording artist and speaker and author. And welcome, Tammy. I'm so happy to have you here. And your story is absolutely, I'll tell you this, okay? When I was listening to one of a previous interview, because I just wanted to get to know a little bit more about this story that sounded so compelling, I was in the car with my husband, and by the time we got through the first 5 minutes, we were both in tears. So, but let's start back a little further before we get the audience up to that point. I just want to start back because your childhood, you grew up in church. Tell me a little bit about what faith looked like in your younger years.
Yeah, you know, I had gone to a very charismatic church when I was younger, and I love my church. We had a great church. We had an awesome youth group of about 400 kids, and you know, my life was surrounded with music, Christian music growing up, and truly faith. And I learned early on, especially through my mom, that it was more than a religion, but that it was about a relationship with Jesus. So I understood what that really meant. That was the foundation of my life. And then when you start putting friendships in that, and music, and great teaching, I really felt like I was surrounded by some really great, authentic, practical people, and I guess especially people that taught me about the things of God.
Right.
And so in my youth group, I met this kid when I was 15, fell crazy in love. When he walked into church, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, he was so yummy, that feeling when I looked in the back of the room thinking, wow, I get to go to church with that guy. And so we met, and I was allowed to date when I was 16, and we started dated for about 7.5 years. I went off to Bible college and came back and just felt like, I can't live without this guy. He's just amazing.
And he obviously felt the same way.
I hope he did.
Yeah.
I hoped he did.
I could tell from the story he absolutely did.
Well, I felt lucky, you know, because every girl in our youth group wanted to date this guy and his brothers. And I don't know what it was about me, because I was such a tomboy. I was such a jock growing up, and all these really beautiful, beautiful girls and hair and makeup, and they wanted to date these guys, and I was like, let's go play basketball. You know, so I was like, I don't know what it was about me, but he chose me. And I felt lucky. And we had 7.5 years of great dating relationship. I had come from a broken home, so I didn't have a father in my life every day telling me that I was beautiful, that I was a princess, that God had a plan for my life, until this young kid who had found faith later in life walked into my life, and he began to speak those things into my life.
Okay, so let's stop there for just a second, because you didn't have a father in your life. And I understand that pain. I did have a father in my life, but the relationship with my father wasn't good. So it really distorts relationships many times.
I think so.
But I think what I'm hearing you say is your foundation that your mother instilled in you, and your faith in Christ, your friendships, the development that you'd had growing up, allowed you to recognize a healthy relationship and be yourself. You were confident in who you were. You didn't have to press up and put all that stuff on. And so I think that's probably what he recognized in you, is your authenticity.
Yeah, and I was comfortable in my own skin. I've always been comfortable in my own skin. You know, I know we go through those seasons of comparing, and I wish this and I wish that. I think we'll always have that no matter how old we get. But at the end of the day, I know who I am in Christ. I'm confident in that, and I'm okay with that. You know, even in the gifts, I began to pursue music in my youth group, and writing and things like that. And eventually I signed my first record deal in 1995. And you know, I could sit and compare myself to some of my greatest friends in the industry, like Natalie Grant, who could sing the wallpaper off of the wall.
She's amazing.
But I always tease her and say, but you can't dance like me. So I think we're even. But you know, I never felt like I had a great gift of music either, not as some big great voice, but I think again at the end of the day I felt like, but I've got something. But like God gave me something, and I can do something with this.
Don't you think we all doubt ourselves? Because I know I sure do. You know, well, am I really qualified to do this? Am I really? And I read that in part of your story, that you really did have some doubt in there. Did you start singing? And you love to dance. Did you start singing and dancing as a child? Were you dancing around the house?
Yeah, always. Mom said I was walking at 9 months. So, you know, I've always been filled with a lot of energy and a lot of life. I'm quick to laugh. And I think for me, music was all a part of all of that blend. And so when I began to write music, and on the first album that I released, it just, again, it was authentically me.
Yeah.
I didn't have to try to pretend to be somebody that I wasn't, and I appreciated that about my first record deal. And, you know, I just began to follow down that road of music and ministry, and got married in 1990, and he began to travel with me and minister with me full time on the road, and we just somehow made it work. We juggled a lot of things together, but we made it work. At the end of the day, we didn't just love each other, but we liked each other. And I was a lucky girl. Even I was a blessed woman, even throughout my entire marriage, because I knew love faithfully. I knew love consistently. I never questioned it. I never doubted it. And when we talk about knowing who we are in Christ, so much of that also is very helpful when we surround ourselves with good people that also celebrate us in our relationship with Jesus. And for a woman to have a man in her life that fully covers her, that fully believes in her, that constantly reminds her how beautiful she is, I had that every day. So I also had that confidence, not just from who God said I was, but also who my husband said I was. And everything was about to shift, and everything was about to change. A girl not thinking I had a testimony, and fast forward 11 years later in our marriage, and everything shifted and changed for me.
Wow. Let me stop you there for a minute, because when you talk about having that husband who built you up and made you complete, and that's really what that relationship is supposed to be about. That's the way God designed it. And I think about our next generation, and I think about the girls out there who are struggling to find that young man. But he's out there. And I'm thinking about the young men who are out there who need to be those young men, you know, who need to get their relationship, we all do, you know, right with God first. And then go into our relationship with the opposite sex. And complete one another. And it sounds like you really had that. You were at the height of your career. You were at the height of your marriage. And so go ahead and tell us about that day, which it's fascinating. So I'll let you tell that part, and I know you've got so much to share, the significance of the day that it happened. And so take us to that place where y'all were going over first.
So I was asked to go over to Jamaica on a mission trip, and it was a season in my life where I just sort of wondered what's next. And I know we all get in those places, in and out of seasons, where, you know, sometimes we're like, thank God that storm in my life is at an end. I'm in a good place, praise God. There's other times we're in that season and we feel, I'm stuck, I feel numb, I don't feel hopeful. But I was in a place where I was asking God, what's next? I feel complete, I feel whole, but am I in your will or mine? Like, what does that even look like? I want to know that I know. So I knew that this trip was pivotal. I knew God was up to something. I just didn't have any idea what it was. And I took off to Jamaica with my husband. We had a week to vacation on one side of the island before we were to begin our mission trip on the other side. And so we were traveling from one place to the next. And we stopped off at this legendary place called the Blue Lagoon. And he wanted to free dive in the Blue Lagoon.
Because he'd been a diver for a while. Trent had been a diver for
he was certified at the age of 12.
Wow.
So he was brilliant at it. He never did anything to take a risk. I was never afraid of Trent being in the water. And so we had lunch there on the edge of the water, and he suited up and said, I'll be gone for 15 minutes, and I'll come back, and we'll go do something you want to do. And I thought, that sounds fair. That's perfect. And I watched him slip into the water, and halfway between that dock and that hole, he waved goodbye to me, just like he had done a million times before, only that time it was different because I had no idea that that would be the last time I'd ever see him again. So I stood on the edge of the water. I finished lunch. 15 minutes went by, turned into 30, into 45, and into an hour. Wow. And I'll never forget that feeling of standing up on the edge of the water, looking out into the lagoon, feeling that everything had just shifted. Like everything has just changed. And I can't do anything about it. I needed to be rescued at that moment. I felt numb. I felt hopeless. I was scared. I was in a foreign country all by myself. There wasn't one person to pray with me or to hold me, and I was just alone. And I called in a dive team that began to search for him. And during that time of the search, I went into the back room of this restaurant by myself, and I wept and I cried and I sang songs that drew me to hope. That had everything to do with my life at that exact moment. It was very defining moment for me. And I believed in that moment, like, wow, you must really believe, like, everything you've been taught, everything you've sung about, everything you've written about, like I had practiced for that moment my whole life.
Right.
And it all came down to, I do believe. God, I hate what's going on. I don't understand. I'm numb, but I know you love me. I know you're bigger than this. I'll be able to figure this out one day. I can't now. I can't see you right now in this. But if you just help me breathe one more moment, help me breathe through this.
He's really the only one who can. I mean, obviously this is still painful, as it would be, but it's been several years.
Yeah, you know, there's healing, though. Even though I can sit here with you today, Anne, and have moments of just, it's because it still takes my breath away.
Sure.
Grief is one of those unbelievable things, especially when something tragic happens, where
Right.
you never got a chance to say one more I love you, one goodbye, or anything. You just are forced to put your life back together again. And there's healing in my life. Thank God for healing. Thank God for hope. But it's like a scar, you know, that's healed, but I can look down at it and just think, look at
always
where I've
gonna be
come,
there.
look at where I'm going, but ooh, I remember, you know, and so I remember how I felt when I tell those stories. I go right back to the edge of the water. But the beauty of it is when I take you to the edge of the water, I bring you to the other side of that to show you exactly what God's done in my life, where it's real, it's authentic to me. There's nothing fake about the hope that I have in Jesus. Pain is very real, but so is hope.
Yeah.
And that has been my journey back to life again the last 15 years.
Where would we be without that hope?
I don't
And
know.
I think our audience listening can probably relate to this in different ways. You know, they may be having struggled with some abandonment issues or a divorce. You know, there's all sorts of pain that we struggle with out here, but it doesn't take the pain away. And I like what you said about that. It's not that it's going to be gone.
Yeah.
That scar's going to be there. But we're going to learn how to persevere
Yes.
and be courageous
Yes.
in our faith
Yes.
through that. And sometimes God draws us in closer. And I think I heard you say that He had prepared you, and you knew. He knew this was going to happen.
Yes.
But He also knew that you were prepared, and He was going to be able to wrap you in His loving arms. So I know this is painful, but take us back a little bit further into that day, because this was the day right before 9/11 in 2001.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not just my world shifting and changing. A lot of people's world
Right.
shifted and changed. And yeah, that dive happened on the 10th. The search started for him on the 10th of September, and it continued the morning of September 11th, 2001. So as that search began for him and continued, I was getting phone calls at the home of two perfect strangers. My family was grounded on planes all across the country, so
Sure.
no one could get to me. And then I got the second call that they had recovered his body from the Blue Lagoon. And man, I lost it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And I'm watching now the second plane plow into the Twin Towers in New
Right.
York City. So America's falling apart. My personal world is falling apart. I'm feeling like, God, where are you in
Yeah.
all of this? And what does this mean? Like, this is crazy that all this is happening right now. And I actually thought that it might be the end of the world. 'Cause
Sure,
I thought,
you would.
get ready,
Yeah.
start asking forgiveness.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't.
Wow.
But then, you know, I was forced to try to trust God when nothing made sense. You know, to me, I've learned that trusting God means seeing things the way God sees them, not the way I see them, but seeing things the way God sees them. My plan changed in a moment's time, standing on the edge of the water. My plan changed. Everything changed for me.
Sure it did.
But even being with you here in this moment, like I know that I know God's plan has not changed in all of it. It doesn't mean I always love it.
Yeah.
There's times I still struggle with it and hate the new plan. But I've learned to give my pain purpose through it. And if there's one thing that I've learned on this journey back to healing, is that I can never interpret my numbness as God's absence in my life. There's never a time when Jesus is not speaking to us. There's never a time when He's not present in our lives. We can shut the door. We can feel abandoned. We can feel numb, like God is not listening anymore. It's easier to do that than to fight for your spiritual life and say, God, speak to me through this, move through this. God's intention is to always move us from a place of brokenness into a place of healing and wholeness. It's His intention. So if you believe that, then you've got to stay open to healing in your life. It doesn't mean it has to come overnight. I don't think God expects that from us. He just says, stay open, and watch me do something beautiful with the brokenness of your life.
Right. take those baby steps. You know?
Totally.
If it's baby steps for someone listening, someone watching today, be courageous and take a baby step. And don't do it alone. Do you not find, and I know you do, because you've shared your story a lot of places, 700 Club, you've been a ton of places sharing your story, and thank God for that, because that encourages others to share their stories.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the worst places we can be, and I've been there, is in isolation and saying, I'm the only one dealing with this type of issue.
Definitely,
No one
yep.
knows how I feel, and I don't want anybody to know how I feel because they wouldn't understand. But it's that transparency and vulnerability when we come out and we share our story with safe people.
Yes.
And then when we're courageous enough and God's worked on us enough and He's gotten us to that point to do what you're doing today, and that's sharing with a multitude of millions of people to say, you're not in this alone.
No, exactly. And I think you're exactly right. When we choose the isolation and to try to journey it alone, we weren't meant to journey stuff alone. It becomes heavier. We go into a darker hole, a bigger pit. We feel stuck and we can't get out of it. The joy is gone. And without joy in our lives, the components of our lives will not work. Our spiritual life will not work if we are lacking joy. So how do you find those things? How do you get back beyond the sorrow of your circumstances into a season of joy and new opportunity? If we're constantly living in what happened in the past of our life, we will never find the possibilities of what God has for us now.
Right.
So you have to give yourself permission to journey through whatever your circumstances are, however tough it is, the disappointment, hurt, pain, and failure, journey through it. But you have to be always looking to come to the other side of that, or you will continue to bring that stuff into every new season of your life.
That's so
and
true.
you'll never move forward.
What a great word. I mean, really, truly, what a great word of encouragement. Now talk a little bit about, because your story, your life story is written in this book.
Yes.
You've
My entire life story, yeah.
This is a book of courageous faith. This is a book that will inspire those people at home. I mean, I really think it was very brave of you. How long did it take you before you were willing to put this on paper?
Wow. You know, I was traveling with Women of Faith at the time, and I think I was with them for, I want to say, 2 years before I started writing this book with Thomas Nelson and Women of Faith. And it's such a gift to me now. It was healing for me. It was healing for me to write my story. And then to think that anybody would get anything out of my story, that still amazes me. Because I'm just a girl that has a story just like everyone else has a story.
We all have a story.
Yeah, and to think that there would be anything in my story that would encourage or inspire somebody, it still blows me away. But the book, I felt like I was writing it for me. Let me tell my story, so I'll always have it in a treasure. And from it has come great healing to people's lives, which is amazing. I love getting to hear the responses of people, and people get different things from it. It's not just a story of death, it's a story of hope.
Right.
But it takes you through, within my family, divorce, adultery, brokenness, death, restoration, healing, redemption. I mean, there's just an amazing story that I think also all of us can say, I can relate to that. I
Right.
can identify with that. So that was a gift to me that I wrote just probably, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years after the death of my husband.
Wow.
And it continues to be life to me.
Yeah.
As I find out that it's life to others. So it's been a gift.
It is helpful when we can help and encourage others, because God really created us for that.
Yes.
You know, and tells us that we're to comfort others.
Yes.
With that same comfort we've been given. And I love this picture. I think that's such a sweet picture.
Oh, I love that too.
Of
Yeah,
you
I
and
would
your
bring him up
husband.
on stage with me and make him sing because he was horrible. And it was awesome. It was awesome. The crowd
That's
loved
great.
it. And he
Of
tried to
course they
sing. And
did.
I laughed and he laughed. And people always thought, I can't believe you did that, Tim. And I'm like, we planned it.
Yeah, and how courageous
So
of
bad.
him just to
I know,
say,
I
it's
know it.
okay, I'm going to get up there and just...
Totally.
What
But-
great memories. I mean, you
Yeah.
have some phenomenal memories.
I do.
Even
I
though
do.
it was a short time,
Yeah.
but it was a
Yeah.
beautiful time, and there's some great great parts in that. So now talk to me about your latest CD, because you have a
Yeah.
new CD out, and so
Yeah.
how long did it take before you were really inspired, or was it fairly quickly that God just gave you song again and gave you music to pour your heart into again?
No, it took a while because I certainly, I was so broken that I just felt like I had nothing to give. I really had nothing to give. And I think it was through the Women of Faith platform, as I began to heal those early stages, where I started to listen to the hearts of other women that were
Right.
affected even by my story. And so I would go into the studio and I'm like, I have the perfect song to write. I know what to write for that girl that's feeling numb. I've been there. I'm going to write her a song that says to hang on, like you're not alone. Like God's going to pick you up in this moment. He's going to carry you, and he's going to stand in the gap with you, and you can't stand in your own. You know, it's been a delight of my heart to be able to sing into the hearts of people that say like, can you tell me something? Give me something. And so it probably took me, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years before I had written my album after his death, and this is my third. And it's a fun album. You know, my life is not heavy, even though I've gone through some heavy stuff. I have chosen not to make it heavy.
It is a choice.
Yes, and I want to be a light. And so this album, it kind of goes back to my early roots of a little bit of dance, a little bit of urban, and really fun. And so the album title I'd had written on a sticky note. I just wrote Sunny Days, and I thought, you know,
It's a great title.
I want to write a song one day about sunny days, and when I'm in that place, I want to be able to say, like, I'm grateful that storm in my life is at an end. And I wanted to write it for the girl that says, sister, I'm praying for the same thing. I'm tired of the storm, and one day it will be at an end. So this album has got some worship stuff on it. It's got some great fun stuff, and Sunny Days, it captures that heart of walking into and embracing a new season of your life.
Wow. That's really powerful. And you know, music is so healing. I know when I was going through my time where God was taking me from fear to courage and from, you know, mistrust to trusting Him fully, music was the one thing that kept my head above water.
It's good.
Many, many, many times. So I know this will bring a lot of healing to a lot of people. Now, tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can find you. And I think I've got your website down here, TammyTrent.com. They can go there. They can find more about your music, more about the book, which is Learning to Breathe Again.
Yes.
I mean, that says it all.
It does. It really is.
Because sometimes you do feel your breath's taken away.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And still, here I am all these years later, and I still have moments of just, I can't believe life turned out this way, and yet at the same breath, you know, and you feel like you don't have enough to give, God breathes His very breath into you, which pushes you towards the things of God, if that's what you choose. It's a series of choices in your life. You can choose to be bitter and angry and do nothing with your circumstances, or you can choose to say, God, I might not have much to give, but I have this. Can you do something with it? And He always says, just give me something.
Right.
You'll be amazed at what I can do with your something.
Yes.
And I think that's what I continue to do each year is give Him a little something. Try to let go of a lot, but it ends up being a little something. But yes, I'm blessed to be with you and to share my life. And TammyTrent.com, you can connect with me there. The music is there. The books are there.
And I'm sure you're on Facebook, Twitter,
Yeah, all those
Instagram.
crazy social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's a great way to stay connected.
It
I
is,
mean, my
it
life
is.
of ministry isn't just also on a platform.
Right.
It's off of a platform just as much as it is on a platform.
It is. People want to stay connected in this day and age, especially to people who are courageous. Well, you're a very, very courageous person.
Thank
you have a
you.
very courageous God faith. God's definitely instilled that in you and prepared you. And I just appreciate your message, your testimony, your transparency, and your heart for sharing with other men, women, teens this message of, you know, persevere, stick with it, don't give up. There is hope.
Amen, there sure is.
Tammy, thanks so much for being here with us. And thank you for being with us today. And we'll look forward to seeing you again.